My girlfriend's creepy neighbors made my life a nightmare, so I tried to confront them. But when I discovered the horrifying truth in the basement, I realized my life was in grave danger. I first crossed paths with my girlfriend Emily about 7 months ago in a local bar. We clicked right away, and by the third day, we were officially dating. She brought nothing but joy into my life, a true definition of a soulmate. So, when I finished my degree, we both decided that moving in together made sense. Emily is a couple of years older than me and had already started working, so I ended up moving into her place. But once I settled in, things took a turn for the worse. The first incident occurred on my very first night there. Emily works the night shift, so she was getting ready to leave. "Babe, I'm heading out now. Just a heads up, the neighbors next door can get a bit cranky at night, so try to ignore them," she said with a sweet smile. Yeah, I got it," I replied. I kissed her goodbye, and she headed out, leaving me alone in her home. I settled at the kitchen table and started working. For a bit of background, I work remotely as a character designer for a video game company. Everything was peaceful for a few hours, but around 2 a.m., the so-called cranky neighbors started yelling uncontrollably. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like a fierce argument. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the noise kept getting louder. I could hear banging against the walls, glass breaking on the floor, and more shouting. It even sounded like several voices were overlapping, creating a chaotic mess. I tried drowning out the noise with music blasting in my headphones, but it was no use. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, so I called it a night and stopped working. The next day flew by, and I decided not to mention the neighbors to Emily. It seemed normal for her, and I didn't want her to think it bothered me too much. After all, it was her house. When night came again, I was watching TV on the couch when the neighbors started up again. The thumping, glass shattering, and furniture being tossed around made it sound like a WWE match was happening next door. Jesus Christ, I muttered to myself. Suddenly, I heard banging on the door, followed by a terrifying scream. "What the hell?" I said, pausing the movie I was watching. It seemed like the neighbor was trying to break into the house. That was the last straw. I got up and headed to the back door where the banging and screaming were coming from. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen table, just in case the guy managed to break through. Thank God the door was locked. I leaned against the door, each punch rattling my back. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling. I had no idea what to do. For all I knew, this guy could seriously hurt me. It felt like forever before the banging finally stopped. At the same time, the screaming ceased, and there was nothing but silence. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath. There was no way I could live like this. I decided I'd have to talk to Emily about it when she got home. With that in mind, I made sure all the doors were locked, shut all the windows, and went to bed. A few hours later, around 6 a.m., Emily came home and slipped into bed beside me. She hugged me from behind and kissed the back of my neck, waking me up. "How's everything?" she asked softly. "Were the neighbors loud?" I grunted and turned to face her, rubbing my eyes. "What?" Emily giggled. "How did it go with the neighbors?" I thought it was odd that she asked me today and not yesterday. Maybe it was just because I was tired. "The husband tried to break in," I said. "He pounded on the door for at least 2 minutes, screaming. I thought that was it for me. Seriously, Emily, I don't think this house is safe for us. As long as the door's locked, you should be fine," she said with a sweet smile. I gave Emily a serious look. "Listen, I can't keep living like this," I said, trying to be as gentle as possible. "I didn't feel safe here last night. Are you telling me this happens every night?" Emily looked down, her eyes filled with discomfort. I felt bad for blaming her for something beyond her control, but we clearly needed to address it. I couldn't live in fear every night. "I'll call the wife tonight and see if we can do anything about it," she said, hugging me tightly. "Okay?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, baby. I know it's not your fault, but I can't keep living in fear every night." The following evening, Emily left for her night shift again. Once more, I was alone in her house. About 15 minutes later, She texted me, saying the problem had been resolved and that things should be better tonight. I thanked her and lay down on the couch to relax. I must have dozed off while watching a movie. A few hours later, around 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of those crazy neighbors screaming again. Angry and fed up, I got out of bed, ready to confront them once and for all. I needed to figure out what was really going on. But as I approached the front door, something felt different. The voices and banging sounded much closer than usual, almost like they were inside the house. It was the first time I really paid attention to where the noise was coming from, and what I realized was unsettling to say the least. Subtle, but unsettling. Following the sounds, I was shocked when they didn't lead me to the front entrance or even the neighbor's house. Instead, they seemed to be coming from the basement door, the one part of the house I hadn't explored yet. My heart started racing. This had to be my imagination. There's no way those noises were coming from Emily's basement, right? With my legs trembling, I tried to push the basement door open, but it was locked tight. The moment I touched the door, the screams from below grew louder, almost like a desperate plea for help. "What the hell is down there?" I muttered to myself. The very thought sent chills down my spine. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, my Uncle Will had taught me how to pick locks when I was a kid, just in case I ever found myself in a tight spot. If there was ever a time to use that skill, it was now. I grabbed a couple of paper clips and started working them into the lock. Within minutes, the door clicked open, but it still wouldn't budge. Desperate, I searched the house for something to pry it open with, and I found a crowbar. Using all my strength, I forced the door open. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't. The moment the door gave way, I was hit with blood-curdling screams that pierced my ears, screams you'd expect to hear in a horror movie. Covering my ears, I pushed my way down the stairs. What I saw was beyond horrifying. Lined up across the basement floor were the bodies of dozens of men, all neatly arranged in a row. They all looked to be around my age, and disturbingly, many of them resembled the exes Emily had mentioned in passing. Above the bodies was a jar, and inside it were their faces, glowing with an eerie light. They were screaming in excruciating pain, and it dawned on me that what I was seeing were their souls trapped and tormented, suffering endlessly even in death. The smell was unbearable. The bodies were drained of all their fluids, leaving nothing but skin. Yet, their faces were somehow still recognizable, and each body was carefully positioned to maintain its original form. In front of each body, a name was scrawled in blood: Jack, Noah, Michael, and so on. The screams were more like frantic gasps when heard up close. The noise was overwhelming, making me feel dizzy. The intensity of the screams only grew, the sound burrowing into my brain. My mind went blank, my body trembling at the realization that this horror show was Emily's doing. As if things couldn't get worse, I reached the end of the line, where another name was written in blood. But there was no body behind it, only an empty space, as if it was being reserved. Dylan. My name. Just then, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Emily. My heart nearly stopped as I read it. "Hey babe, on my way home. Sorry about yesterday. Let's have some fun tonight."